What if everything you've ever believed about a woman's pleasure was only a fraction of the truth? What if what really unlocks desire isn't technique, pressure, or performance, but understanding? Simple, human understanding. Pleasure begins long before the body responds. It begins with curiosity. As Dr. Jennifer Berman often emphasizes, when we stop seeing pleasure as a mystery and start seeing it as part of our biology, our relationships change. We show up differently. We listen differently. We connect differently. And that connection becomes the foundation for every type of orgasm a woman can experience. The first type is the clitoral orgasm, the most common and most misunderstood. It's not about intensity, it's about presence. The clitoris contains thousands of nerve endings, more than any other part of the body, yet most people rush it or treat it like a button instead of a conversation. Pleasure here grows when pressure matches comfort, when rhythm matches breath, when connection matches curiosity. Then there's the vaginal orgasm, often portrayed as the Holy Grail, yet it's simply a different pathway. It responds to relaxation, not force, to emotional safety, not performance. Many women don't experience it easily, not because something is wrong with them, but because the world rarely teaches them to relax without guilt. Relaxation isn't a luxury, it's the gateway. The blended orgasm combines multiple sources of stimulation, like clitoral and vaginal, and becomes a kind of symphony, a merging of sensations. It teaches something profound. Pleasure doesn't fit into categories. It blends, layers, and evolves based on trust, communication, and presence. Then there's the G-spot orgasm, where the anterior vaginal wall becomes a source of deep, full-bodied pleasure. It's not about anatomy alone, it's about mindset. When a woman feels safe enough to let go, her body opens. The idea that this orgasm is rare comes from a world that rushes connection and expects instant release. But the body responds to slowness, patience, and emotional grounding. Curiosity is the doorway that so few people walk through, yet it holds the power to completely rewrite how we understand pleasure, intimacy, and the female body. Shame thrives in silence. Fear grows in the dark. But curiosity, gentle, open, non-judgmental curiosity, turns on the light. And the moment the light comes on, fear begins to lose its shape. Shame begins to dissolve. The body begins to feel like a place you can inhabit instead of escape. Most people don't realize how deeply shame is woven into a woman's relationship with her own pleasure. Shame tells her she shouldn't want too much. Shame tells her to be quiet, to play small, to not ask for anything. Shame tells her desire is somehow wrong, that her arousal is unpredictable, mysterious, or too complicated. And after years of absorbing those messages, the body begins to armor itself. The breath tightens, the pelvis tenses, the mind disconnects. And then people ask, why is female arousal so tricky? It's not tricky, it's guarded. Curiosity changes everything, because curiosity has no agenda. Curiosity doesn't demand quick release or instant answers. Curiosity doesn't shame the body for being slow, soft, sensitive, or layered. Curiosity simply says, let me understand you. Let me listen. Let me explore without fear, without judgment, without rushing. And when that kind of curiosity enters a relationship, whether with a partner or with oneself, the body begins to trust again. Fear cannot survive in the presence of understanding. The moment you understand why something happens, it loses its ability to intimidate you. For example, when someone learns that arousal depends on context, on stress levels, emotional safety, the environment, the timing, they stop blaming themselves for not performing. They stop thinking something is wrong with them. They realize arousal is not a switch, it's a system, one that responds to connection, not pressure. Curiosity also teaches something profoundly healing, that there is nothing wrong with the way a woman's body works, the way desire rises gradually, the way the body opens only when it feels safe, the way sensations change with emotions, trust, and mindset. Curiosity replaces the judgment of why am I like this with the compassion of let me understand what my body is telling me. Imagine someone approaching female pleasure the way a scientist approaches a new discovery, or the way an artist approaches a new canvas, with openness, fascination, and patience. No assumptions, no rushing, just a willingness to witness what unfolds. That mindset shifts everything. Suddenly, pleasure is not a task, it's a dialogue, not a performance, a process, not a mystery, an exploration. This is why so many women describe their most meaningful moments of intimacy not as the moments where everything was technically perfect, but the moments where they felt truly seen, heard, understood. Curiosity tells the body, you are safe here, you are allowed here, you are welcome here. And that safety softens the muscles, deepens the breath, awakens the nerve pathways. Pleasure flows where there is permission. The most powerful transformation happens when a woman becomes curious about her own body, maybe for the first time, when she touches without shame, when she explores without guilt, when she discovers her rhythms without fear of being too much or not enough. That kind of self-curiosity rewires years of silence. It rewires cultural conditioning. It rewires the belief that pleasure must always come from someone else. Suddenly she feels ownership, agency, and confidence. She becomes the expert of her own landscape. And once curiosity replaces shame, communication becomes easier. Instead of silence, there is language. Instead of guessing, there is guidance. Partners no longer fear doing it wrong because curiosity encourages learning, adjusting, exploring. A couple that stays curious never gets stuck. They grow, adapt, evolve. They become co-creators of pleasure rather than performers of a script. Curiosity also teaches that every woman's body is unique. What awakens one person might overwhelm another. What one loves deeply, another might feel neutral about. There is no universal formula. Curiosity honors individuality instead of comparison. It allows each woman to discover her own pathways to climax without feeling broken or behind. It allows each partner to discover what creates real connection instead of copying something they saw, heard, or assumed. Think about how children learn. They explore, they ask questions, they touch, they test, they observe. They are not embarrassed by learning, they embrace it. But somewhere along the journey to adulthood, especially regarding sexuality, that playful exploration gets replaced with pressure, fear, and awkward silence. Curiosity reminds us to return to that natural learning state, where the body is not something to hide, but something to understand, celebrate, and listen to. And as the fear melts away, something profound begins to happen. Pleasure becomes more accessible. Orgasms become less elusive. Arousal becomes more natural. The body stops resisting and starts responding. Fear tightens, curiosity relaxes. Fear shuts down, curiosity opens. Fear says don't, curiosity says why not explore. This is why the most fulfilling sexual experiences often happen between people who feel free to ask questions, to communicate preferences, to express desires, to adjust the pace, to follow each other's breaths and sounds. Curiosity invites both partners to be present, responsive, intuitive, not performing, not guessing, not forcing. And this is where shame finally loses its power. Shame cannot survive in a relationship where questions are welcomed. It cannot survive in a mind that seeks understanding instead of punishment. It cannot survive in a body treated with respect, slowness, and attention. Curiosity makes space for the truth that pleasure is not something you deserve only under certain conditions. It is something your body is designed to experience. The irony is that people often think knowledge kills the mystery of sex, but the opposite is true. Knowledge deepens mystery. Understanding expands possibility. The more curious you are, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more you feel. And the more you feel, the more deeply pleasure can unfold. Imagine two people who approach each other not from fear, but from fascination, who ask, what does your body love? What makes you feel safe? What helps you open? Imagine someone being told, take your time, I want to understand you. That alone can be an erotic experience because it is rare, sincere, and nourishing to the soul. Curiosity is the energy of presence. Shame is the energy of disappearance. Curiosity says, I want to know you. Shame says, hide. And no body can open under the command to hide. When curiosity becomes the foundation of intimacy, relationships become more emotionally attuned. Partners read each other better. They sense the difference between tension and excitement. They adjust without being asked. They recognize that arousal is not linear. They understand that connection is the real ignition switch, not pressure or performance. Curiosity gives women the freedom to explore all 6 orgasm types without fear of failing. It teaches them that some orgasms come naturally while others develop gradually. It teaches them that there is no rush, no deadline, no universal standard. It teaches them that exploration itself is pleasurable, even if the journey takes time, even if the sensations shift, even if the process unfolds slowly, and slowly is not a flaw. Slowly is sensory, slowly is embodied, slowly is honest. When fear dissolves, the body finally has enough space to feel everything it was meant to feel. And that is the real gift of curiosity, not just better pleasure, but deeper self-trust, not just better intimacy, but truer connection, not just knowledge, but liberation. Because when a woman replaces shame with understanding, she doesn't just change how she experiences pleasure. She changes the story she tells herself about her body, her worth, her voice, and her right to feel. And once that story changes, everything that follows becomes richer, safer, more alive, and more deeply fulfilling. Curiosity at its core is love in action. It is presence made visible. It is the courage to ask instead of assume, to explore instead of fear, to learn instead of judge. And that courage unlocks everything. The human body is exquisitely designed not just to react, but to respond to signals that say you are safe, you are seen, you are valued. When it comes to female arousal, these signals matter more than most people realize. The body doesn't respond well to pressure, shame, or fear. It responds to trust. It responds to safety. It responds to the kind of connection that tells every nerve ending, every cell, every muscle that it is allowed to open. Think about it. The body is constantly scanning the environment, consciously or unconsciously, for danger. When it senses threat, even the smallest one, the nervous system tightens. Blood flow changes. Muscles tense. The mind becomes vigilant. In that state, pleasure becomes almost impossible. The brain interprets stimulation through the lens of risk rather than invitation, and the body shuts down sensations to protect itself. The paradox is striking. The very thing that makes pleasure possible, the body, will resist it if it doesn't feel safe. Safety is the foundation of arousal. It doesn't mean removing all discomfort or avoiding challenge. It means creating an environment where the body can let go without fear. Emotional safety, feeling accepted, not judged, and not pressured, is the key. When a woman feels safe, her nervous system relaxes, her breath deepens, her pelvis softens, and her mind stops running a background checklist of worries. That's when sensation can grow, expand, and reach its full expression. Safety isn't a luxury. It is a prerequisite for the body to even consider pleasure. Connection amplifies safety. When someone feels genuinely connected to their partner or even to themselves through mindful attention, the body releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone that deepens trust and intimacy. Oxytocin is nature's way of saying, this is a safe space. You can let your guard down. It transforms touch into something electric, subtle, and deeply fulfilling. Connection allows communication to flow, even without words. A touch can say, I understand you. A gaze can say, you are safe here. These small signals carry enormous weight. Emotional openness, closely tied to connection, is the soil in which pleasure grows. When emotions are allowed, acknowledged, and honored, the body follows suit. Emotional openness allows vulnerability, and vulnerability allows receptivity. The most profound orgasms often occur not from the perfect stroke or technique, but from the sense that one's body, mind, and feelings are fully seen and accepted. When a woman knows that her emotional experience is welcomed, her body relaxes in ways it could never do under pressure. Emotional openness isn't just a feeling. It is the mechanism by which arousal flows naturally. The interplay of safety, connection, and emotional openness explains why some encounters feel electrifying while others feel flat, even if the physical stimulation is identical. Pleasure is never just physical. It is a conversation between the body, mind, and environment. Every nerve ending listens for context. Am I safe? Am I wanted? Am I understood? The answer determines whether sensation amplifies or diminishes. This is why communication is so powerful. Simple expressions of care, attentiveness, and responsiveness tell the nervous system to let go. A partner who listens, who pauses to check in, who attunes to breath and reaction, is speaking directly to the body's language of safety. A woman who learns to observe her own responses, to honor what feels good without judgment, is offering herself internal safety and connection. The body recognizes this and responds generously. When emotional safety is present, the body can explore all its pathways to pleasure without resistance. Muscles soften, tissues become more responsive, and blood flow increases. The clitoris, the G-spot, the cervix. These areas respond not because of external pressure, but because the internal environment allows them to. Nervous system readiness transforms touch into sensation, sensation into excitement, excitement into arousal, and arousal into orgasm. But when safety is absent, even the most precise touch can feel flat or uncomfortable. The mind distracts. The muscles tighten. Desire diminishes. The same physical act becomes ineffective, not because the body is incapable, but because it was never permitted to fully engage. This is why understanding safety is more powerful than any technique, any position, or any skill. The body prioritizes context over mechanics every time. Safety, connection, and emotional openness are also intertwined. Safety without connection can feel lonely. Connection without openness can feel shallow. Openness without safety can feel risky. True arousal requires all three working together. The woman who experiences these conditions is not just experiencing pleasure, she is embodying trust, intimacy, and authenticity. Her responses are natural, uninhibited, and deeply satisfying. This understanding also reframes how we think about sexual problems. Low arousal, difficulty reaching orgasm, or delayed response are rarely failures of technique. They are signals from the nervous system indicating a lack of the environment it needs. Recognizing this shifts the narrative from self-blame to curiosity. What is missing in safety? In connection? In openness? How can these be cultivated? This approach transforms intimacy from performance into exploration, from anxiety into play, from shame into curiosity. When a woman experiences safety, connection, and emotional openness consistently, she begins to internalize these conditions. She no longer waits for permission or external validation. She learns to create safety for herself. She learns to communicate what she needs. She learns that vulnerability is strength, that emotional attunement is power, and that pleasure is not a fleeting reward, but a natural state of being when the body and mind are aligned. The body's responsiveness is not arbitrary. It is biological, emotional, and relational. Every nerve, every pathway, every reflex is tuned to sense whether it can relax and feel pleasure or whether it should remain guarded. Safety tells it you can relax. Connection tells it you are seen. Emotional openness tells it you are accepted. Together, these forces unlock pathways that no technique alone can ever reach. This is why, across cultures and centuries, the most fulfilling sexual experiences are rarely defined by skill or perfection. They are defined by the quality of presence, by the depth of trust, by the authenticity of communication, by the courage to create and sustain emotional safety. The most intimate moments happen not because the body is forced into response, but because it feels free to respond. Understanding this also teaches empathy. Partners who grasp the centrality of safety, connection, and emotional openness approach intimacy differently. They stop focusing on output, orgasm, or performance metrics and start focusing on context, cues, and emotional resonance. They understand that pleasure is not a formula, but a dynamic conversation between minds, bodies, and hearts. When a woman experiences this environment consistently, she is not only more aroused, she is more empowered. She carries trust into her body, into her relationships, and into her life. She understands that her desires are legitimate, her responses are valid, and her pleasure is her right. The nervous system, once vigilant, becomes receptive. The muscles, once tense, become fluid. The mind, once anxious, becomes present. In this space, orgasm is no longer an endpoint. It is the natural blossoming of a body and mind that have been given permission to respond fully. Whether it is clitoral, vaginal, blended, G-spot, cervical, or full body, the response is richer, deeper, and more satisfying because it was never forced, only invited. Safety, connection, and emotional openness transform intimacy into a sanctuary. The body knows this instinctively. It rewards it. It amplifies pleasure. It allows arousal to emerge effortlessly. And it teaches a timeless truth that the most profound sexual experiences are never about technique, size, or speed. They are about presence, trust, and the courage to allow oneself to be truly seen. Every nerve ending, every touch, every sensation is heightened in this environment. The body becomes an instrument attuned not just to physical input, but to relational cues. Pleasure becomes a shared symphony, orchestrated not by pressure, but by trust, not by expectation, but by curiosity, not by fear, but by openness. This is why understanding and cultivating safety, connection, and emotional openness is more powerful than learning positions, tricks, or formulas. They create the conditions in which the body naturally responds. They allow the nervous system to relax, the mind to focus, and the body to feel. And in this state, pleasure is no longer an effort. It is inevitable, natural, and deeply fulfilling. The more consistently these conditions are nurtured, the more a woman's body learns to expect them. Her arousal becomes resilient, her orgasms become more frequent, varied, and intense. Her confidence grows, her intimacy deepens, and she learns the ultimate lesson, that the body is not a puzzle to solve, but a partner to honor, a landscape to explore, and a vessel that responds with generosity when it feels safe, connected, and open. Let's explore the 6 major types of orgasms and what they reveal about female arousal, because understanding these isn't just anatomy. It's insight into the complexity, adaptability, and intelligence of the female body. Each type is a language, a message from the body about what it needs, what it enjoys, and how it responds to connection, safety, and attention. Recognizing these types transforms intimacy from guessing to understanding, from performance to exploration. The first type is the clitoral orgasm, the most common and widely recognized. Often it is oversimplified as just stimulation of the clitoris, but it is far more nuanced. The clitoris contains tens of thousands of nerve endings, more than any other part of the body, and its response is deeply tied to sensitivity, rhythm, and pressure that matches comfort. A clitoral orgasm teaches us that arousal is about attention and attunement. It reveals that sensation alone, when delivered in a safe and connected environment, can create intense pleasure without penetration or complexity. It also shows that the body can respond independently to touch, but only when curiosity, patience, and presence are in place. The vaginal orgasm comes next, often shrouded in myth as the rare or elusive type. In reality, it is not rare, it is just conditional. The vaginal walls respond to internal stimulation in a way that requires relaxation and emotional safety. A vaginal orgasm teaches us that depth isn't always physical, it's psychological. It reveals that the body responds to trust more than pressure, that sensation is amplified when the nervous system feels safe, and that emotional connection can make the difference between comfort and ecstasy. This type shows that arousal is contextual, that it emerges when the mind allows the body to release, and that the same stimulation can feel entirely different depending on environment and emotional state. Blended orgasms combine clitoral and vaginal stimulation simultaneously. This type demonstrates the body's capacity for integration. It reveals that pleasure is not compartmentalized. Sensations layer, overlap, and amplify when attention is holistic. Blended orgasms show that arousal is relational and dynamic. When a woman experiences this, it is a lesson in presence. The body enjoys patterns, rhythms, and interactions that are coordinated and attentive. It emphasizes that pleasure is not about isolating a technique, but about tuning into the body as a responsive whole. The G-spot orgasm, located on the anterior wall of the vagina, often surprises people with its intensity and sensation. It is sometimes considered deeper, fuller, and more pressure-oriented than clitoral orgasms. But here, intensity does not come from force, it comes from responsiveness. A G-spot orgasm teaches us that the body responds to exploration, curiosity, and nuanced engagement. It reveals that arousal is as much about anticipation, emotional readiness, and openness as it is about stimulation. It challenges the myth that a perfect stroke can guarantee pleasure. Instead, it shows that the body is fluid, adaptive, and highly sensitive to trust and emotional alignment. The cervical orgasm is less commonly discussed, but profoundly revealing. It occurs through stimulation of the cervix, often producing deep, full-bodied pleasure that is felt internally and sometimes throughout the entire body. What a cervical orgasm teaches us is that the body holds layers of potential arousal beyond the obvious. It shows that intensity is not always external, it can be internal, encompassing, and slow building. It also reveals how critical emotional safety is, because the cervix is sensitive, and stimulation here can feel uncomfortable if fear, tension, or judgment are present. The cervical orgasm is a lesson in surrender. Pleasure grows when the body feels trust, acceptance, and permission to explore vulnerability. Finally, the full-body orgasm is a culmination, a wave rather than a point, a resonance rather than a spark. It often occurs through a combination of stimulation, connection, breathwork, and emotional openness. The full-body orgasm reveals the profound interconnection between mind, body, and nervous system. It teaches that female arousal is not linear, that pleasure can travel through the body like a current, and that orgasm can be a state rather than a moment. It demonstrates the extraordinary capacity of the female body to integrate emotional, mental, and physical cues into a holistic experience of ecstasy. When we understand these 6 types, a profound truth emerges. Female arousal is multifaceted, adaptive, and highly responsive to context. Each type is a response to a different combination of stimuli, emotional conditions, and psychological states. They reveal that pleasure is never purely mechanical. It is a dance between mind, body, and environment, choreographed by trust, curiosity, and connection. Clitoral orgasms remind us that sensitivity and presence matter. Vaginal orgasms remind us that safety and relaxation are key. Blended orgasms show us the power of integration and attentiveness. G-spot orgasms reveal the importance of exploration and adaptability. Cervical orgasms teach surrender and trust. Full-body orgasms illuminate the profound interconnectedness of the body and mind. Together, they form a spectrum of female pleasure that is as diverse as it is intelligent. Understanding these types also dismantles myths that create shame or fear. No single type is better or more correct than another. Each woman's experience is valid, and each type is a pathway to insight, not a standard to meet. When a woman knows her options, she gains autonomy. When a partner knows the possibilities, they gain understanding. Pleasure becomes not a goal but a journey, not a checklist, but a conversation. Not a performance, but an exploration. The 6 orgasm types also teach the importance of patience. Some orgasms happen quickly, some slowly, some require direct stimulation, some subtle cues, some appear spontaneously, others emerge only through deliberate attention to context. Each one shows that the body communicates in its own language. It is our responsibility to listen, respond, and honor what it signals. Moreover, These types reveal how deeply emotions and mental states influence physical experience. Desire cannot be separated from safety, curiosity, or connection. Pleasure is not isolated to a single organ. It radiates through nerves, muscles, breath, and heartbeat. The orgasm is not a moment of mechanical completion, but a reflection of a system in alignment, body, mind, and emotional environment working together. Learning about these 6 types also empowers exploration. Women who understand them are more likely to experiment with what feels good, communicate preferences, and discover new pathways of pleasure. Partners who understand them are more likely to offer patience, attentiveness, and responsive engagement. Together, they create conditions where arousal is nurtured, not forced, curiosity is celebrated, not judged, and every orgasm in its own way becomes a source of insight rather than a benchmark. In essence, these 6 major orgasm types are not just biological phenomena. They are lessons about the nature of female desire, arousal, and response. They teach us that pleasure is contextual, layered, relational, and adaptive. They show that the body is intelligent, sensitive, and expressive. They highlight the importance of safety, connection, emotional openness, and curiosity. And most importantly, they remind us that female arousal is not something to be simplified, pressured, or controlled. It is something to be understood, honored, and celebrated. When we approach intimacy with this knowledge, everything changes. Touch is no longer mechanical, it is intentional. Communication is no longer awkward, it is attuned. Exploration is no longer shameful, it is empowering. And pleasure is no longer a secret or a mystery. It is a natural, intelligent response of a body that knows what it needs and how to respond when given the right environment. By understanding these 6 types, we do more than demystify orgasm. We demystify desire itself. We recognize that female pleasure is holistic, relational, and profoundly connected to emotional and psychological safety. It is an invitation to slow down, pay attention, communicate, and honor the body's intelligence. Each orgasm type is a teacher, revealing not just what feels good, but what conditions are necessary for the body to thrive. The more we understand these 6 types, the more we realize that pleasure is not a goal to achieve under pressure, but a process that unfolds naturally when curiosity, presence, and safety guide the journey. Each type is an opportunity to learn, to connect, to explore, and to experience the extraordinary responsiveness of the female body in its full complexity. In every encounter, recognizing these types can transform intimacy from a mechanical exercise into a dynamic, responsive, and deeply fulfilling experience. The clitoral, vaginal, blended, G-spot, cervical, and full-body orgasms are not just endpoints. They are windows into the body's needs, desires, and intelligence. They remind us that pleasure is holistic, that arousal is relational, and that the female body, when met with respect, curiosity, and connection, is capable of remarkable, multidimensional experiences. Understanding these types equips women and their partners with awareness, empathy, and empowerment. It allows exploration without shame, learning without fear, and intimacy without pressure. Each type is a pathway into self-discovery, connection, and deep fulfillment. And collectively, they reveal the most important lesson of all. Female arousal is not a problem to solve, but a mystery to honor, an experience to explore, and a capacity to be celebrated. The truth about pleasure is far more subtle and profound than most people realize. It is not technique alone that creates fulfillment, intensity, or satisfaction. The most skilled stroke, the most precise angle, the most memorized pattern cannot compete with the transformative power of communication and awareness. These 2 forces, communication and awareness, are the true architects of pleasure, shaping not only how the body responds, but how intimacy deepens. Communication begins long before touch. It starts with curiosity, with questions, with openness to understanding what another person feels, wants, and needs. When a woman feels safe enough to express her desires without fear of judgment, the nervous system relaxes. Safety is reinforced. Trust grows, and the body responds. A single word, a subtle touch, or a shared sigh can convey attentiveness far more powerfully than any pre-planned technique. Communication is not simply talking, it is listening, observing, and responding. It is attuning to the cues the body offers, reading the language of breath, muscle tone, movement, and expression. Awareness works in tandem with communication. Awareness means being present in the moment, noticing subtle changes, and adapting accordingly. It is the art of noticing what feels good, what causes tension, what invites expansion, and what signals retreat. Awareness is the ability to observe without judgment, to feel without distraction, and to respond without agenda. It transforms touch from rote action into responsive intimacy. When both partners cultivate awareness, the body is guided by empathy and attunement rather than expectation or formula. Consider this: a woman's body is dynamic, not mechanical. A position that feels pleasurable at one moment may feel uncomfortable the next. The clitoris, the G-spot, the cervix, and other sensitive regions do not operate like switches. They respond to context, emotional state, rhythm, and timing. Technique, divorced from awareness, ignores this reality. It assumes universality, precision, and predictability, which rarely exists in real-life arousal. Communication and awareness, on the other hand, honor the body's signals. They adjust, adapt, and respond to the actual experience rather than the imagined one. Through communication, a woman can articulate what she likes, dislikes, or wants more of. A partner who listens and observes these cues reinforces emotional safety and connection. When feedback is integrated into the interaction, pleasure becomes a collaborative creation rather than a performance. Every adjustment, pause, or shift becomes a dialogue, a way of saying, I see you, I hear you, I want to understand your experience. That dialogue alone can trigger arousal because it signals acceptance, attention, and responsiveness. Awareness also includes attunement to nonverbal cues, a slight tightening of muscles, a change in breathing, a subtle movement of the hips. These are signals the body sends when words are not enough. The partner who notices and responds to these cues creates a feedback loop where touch and connection align seamlessly with desire. Awareness turns touch into conversation and presence into sensation. It allows pleasure to flourish in ways that no memorized technique can achieve because it is guided by real-time responsiveness instead of predetermined steps. The 6 orgasm types we discussed earlier demonstrate the importance of communication and awareness. A clitoral orgasm may require subtle shifts in pressure or rhythm. The vaginal orgasm often needs patience, emotional reassurance, and gentle persistence. Blended and full-body orgasms are highly responsive to variations in connection, breath, and emotional energy. The G-spot and cervical orgasms in particular demand awareness because the body's receptivity can change moment to moment. Technique alone cannot guarantee success in any of these types. It is the ability to notice, adapt, and respond that transforms stimulation into fulfillment. Communication and awareness also reduce fear and performance anxiety. When a woman feels understood, seen, and respected, the need to perform disappears. Pressure decreases. Tension melts. The body can finally do what it was designed to do, respond fully, release, and experience pleasure. In contrast, technique without communication may inadvertently create pressure. A partner might follow a formula, expecting results, and the body senses the agenda, triggering stress or resistance. Awareness counteracts this by continuously recalibrating to the body's actual responses rather than imagined expectations. This approach also cultivates intimacy beyond the physical. When communication is present, the emotional connection deepens. When awareness is practiced, trust grows. Pleasure and intimacy become intertwined, inseparable, and mutually reinforcing. Each orgasm, each wave of arousal is not just a bodily response, but a reflection of mutual understanding. Sexual experience is elevated from mechanical act to relational art. Awareness also allows for exploration. A woman may discover preferences she didn't know she had, sensations she hadn't noticed, or ways her body responds under different emotional or physical conditions. A partner with awareness can support this exploration without judgment, facilitating discovery rather than dictating it. Together, communication and awareness transform intimacy into an ongoing dialogue, a co-created map of desire and response, rather than a static performance with a predetermined endpoint. Even small acts of attentiveness can dramatically enhance pleasure. A pause to ask, does this feel good, or would you like more pressure, signals care. Observing a shift in breathing and adjusting touch accordingly communicates understanding. These moments are far more arousing than any rote skill because they create a sense of being truly seen. Pleasure thrives not on what is done, but on how it is done. With attention, with presence, with responsiveness. Moreover, communication and awareness extend beyond the bedroom. A woman who learns to communicate her desires and cultivate awareness in sexual contexts also experiences these skills in daily life. She becomes more attuned to her own needs, more confident in expressing boundaries, and more capable of fostering connection. Awareness nurtures self-knowledge. Communication nurtures relational intelligence. Together, they form a foundation for both erotic and emotional satisfaction. Technique can teach methods, but communication and awareness teach context. Technique may produce momentary arousal, but context, understanding the environment, emotional state, and relational dynamics is what sustains desire. These skills ensure that touch is not mechanical, sensation is not rushed, and orgasm is not forced. They allow the body to respond authentically, fully, and without inhibition. The most satisfying experiences occur when technique, if used at all, is guided by communication and awareness. Every touch becomes intentional, every movement responsive, and every moment attuned to the needs of the body and mind. Partners who practice these principles discover that pleasure multiplies, intimacy deepens, and desire evolves naturally. Ultimately, what the 6 orgasm types show us and what real-life experience confirms is that the female body is highly responsive to relational and emotional cues. A hand, a movement, or a position alone cannot generate consistent, profound pleasure. It is the conversation, verbal, nonverbal, and intuitive, between partners and the mindful awareness of the body's signals that unlocks the full potential of arousal. Communication and awareness turn sexual experience into exploration, curiosity into ecstasy, and presence into orgasm. Pleasure is not a formula. It is a dialogue, a dance, a living conversation between minds, bodies, and hearts. It is about noticing, listening, adjusting, and responding. Technique alone is silent. Communication and awareness speak the language of desire. They create the environment where the body can do what it was designed to do, where trust allows openness, and where curiosity transforms sensation into profound fulfillment. In essence, communication and awareness create a feedback loop of safety, trust, and responsiveness. The body recognizes this loop and responds generously. Every touch is amplified, every movement is meaningful, and every moment carries the potential for connection and pleasure far beyond what technique alone could achieve. They teach us that intimacy is not about perfection, skill, or speed. It is about presence, responsiveness, and relational intelligence. When these elements are in place, every orgasm, whether clitoral, vaginal, blended, G-spot, cervical, or full body, becomes richer, more satisfying, and more deeply connective. Communication and awareness unlock the full spectrum of female arousal. They make pleasure accessible, authentic, and profoundly human. And in the presence of these two forces, technique becomes secondary, almost incidental, because the body is already primed to respond fully, freely, and joyfully. The lesson is clear. Technique can guide, but communication and awareness transform. They are the foundation of every meaningful, fulfilling sexual experience. They are the bridge between desire and fulfillment, between curiosity and ecstasy, between presence and orgasm. And when we prioritize them, we honor the intelligence of the body, the complexity of desire, and the profound depth of connection that makes female arousal so extraordinary. Knowledge is not just power in the abstract sense, it is empowerment in the most intimate, transformative way. When a woman understands her own body, her responses, and the many dimensions of her pleasure, she gains confidence that radiates far beyond the bedroom. Knowledge removes the fog of shame, uncertainty, and fear. It replaces "Am I doing this right?" with "I understand what feels good and I can trust myself to respond accordingly." Confidence grows when curiosity is met with understanding, when exploration is guided by insight rather than guesswork. Understanding the 6 orgasm types, the role of safety, the importance of emotional openness, and the value of communication and awareness all converge into a map of self-knowledge. This knowledge teaches a woman that her body is intelligent, responsive, and capable. She begins to see arousal not as a mysterious, fickle phenomenon, but as a natural response to connection, attention, and curiosity. She understands that pleasure is not a test, a performance, or a standard to meet. It is a reflection of her body's needs, her emotional state, and her relational context. That realization is profoundly liberating. Confidence emerges when the myths that have long governed female sexuality are replaced with science, observation, and personal experience. Society often tells women that they should feel shame for desiring pleasure, that their responses are abnormal if they don't match an ideal, or that satisfaction depends on someone else's skill. Knowledge dismantles these myths. It replaces fear with insight, judgment with curiosity, and uncertainty with clarity. A woman who knows her body can anticipate what will feel pleasurable, communicate her needs, and explore with autonomy. She is no longer reliant on external validation. She trusts her own expertise. Intimacy deepens when knowledge is shared and applied. When partners understand the mechanisms of arousal, the types of orgasms, and the importance of emotional safety and connection, they can co-create experiences of pleasure rather than leaving them to chance. Knowledge allows couples to communicate effectively, to read one another's cues, and to experiment with confidence. It removes the pressure to perform and replaces it with the freedom to explore. Intimacy becomes relational, not transactional. It grows from curiosity, empathy, and attunement rather than from obligation, expectation, or misconception. Self-trust is another profound outcome of knowledge. When a woman understands how her body responds to different stimuli, how emotional context shapes arousal, and how her nervous system signals safety and pleasure, she begins to trust herself in ways she may never have before. She learns that her body is not a mystery to fear, but a guide to follow. This trust allows her to advocate for her needs, to set boundaries confidently, and to embrace her desires without guilt. She recognizes that arousal is not arbitrary or wrong. It is intelligent, natural, and worthy of attention. Knowledge also empowers women to challenge unrealistic expectations, both external and internal. Many have internalized the idea that pleasure must look a certain way, happen at a certain time, or match a partner's agenda. Understanding anatomy, physiology, and the psychology of arousal liberates women from these false narratives. They learn that there is no universal timeline, no singular standard, and no right way to experience orgasm. This awareness fosters freedom, allowing them to focus on what actually feels good rather than what they think should feel good. Confidence, intimacy, and self-trust are interwoven through knowledge. A woman who knows her body can communicate her desires clearly, increasing connection with her partner. That communication enhances trust, creating a safe emotional and physical space for exploration. As trust grows, pleasure becomes more accessible, satisfying, and multidimensional. Each successful experience reinforces her confidence in herself, in her body, and in her relational choices. Knowledge is both the compass and the fuel for this cycle of empowerment. Moreover, knowledge transforms the lens through which women see themselves. Instead of viewing their bodies as objects to be judged or optimized for someone else, they see themselves as instruments of sensation, intelligence, and pleasure. They understand that every response is valid, every orgasm is a message, and every preference is meaningful. This self-recognition cultivates respect, care, and patience toward oneself. Confidence is no longer dependent on performance. It is rooted in understanding, observation, and self-awareness. Knowledge also supports resilience. When a woman understands that arousal may fluctuate with stress, emotional state, or environmental factors, She no longer interprets delayed response or difficulty achieving orgasm as a personal failure. She recognizes these experiences as signals, not shortcomings, and can approach them with curiosity rather than shame. This resilience nurtures a healthy sexual self-image and strengthens her ability to engage fully and authentically in intimacy. Intimacy, too, benefits because partners become co-learners. Knowledge allows both people to engage with empathy, experiment with awareness, and respond to feedback without pressure or judgment. This creates a dynamic of mutual discovery where pleasure is co-created and curiosity is celebrated. Shared knowledge fosters equality, respect, and attentiveness, transforming sexual experience into a collaborative journey rather than a one-sided performance. Ultimately, knowledge illuminates the landscape of female arousal in a way that instinct alone cannot. It shows how safety, connection, emotional openness, and communication interact to shape experience. It reveals the interplay between mind, body, and relational context. It exposes the myths that limit confidence and trust. And most importantly, it provides a framework for empowerment, a roadmap that allows women to navigate pleasure with curiosity, assurance, and authenticity. When a woman carries this knowledge, she approaches intimacy differently. She engages with presence rather than anxiety. She communicates with clarity rather than assumption. She explores with curiosity rather than fear. She trusts herself, her body, and her capacity for pleasure. Confidence grows naturally, intimacy deepens organically, and self-trust becomes instinctual. Knowledge becomes liberation. It transforms sex from a source of uncertainty into a source of insight, fulfillment, and profound human connection. Knowledge ultimately is the gateway to freedom. It allows a woman to replace shame with curiosity, fear with understanding, and doubt with confidence. It empowers her to communicate openly, to remain aware in every moment, and to cultivate the emotional and physical conditions necessary for pleasure. It teaches her that her body is intelligent, responsive, and capable of extraordinary experiences, and that her desires are valid, worthy, and meaningful. In this way, knowledge is not just information, it is empowerment in its most intimate form. It builds confidence because she knows herself. It strengthens intimacy because she can connect authentically. It fosters self-trust because she understands her body, her responses, and her capacity for pleasure. And through these gifts, she can approach every interaction, every touch, every embrace, every moment of desire with clarity, courage, and joy. When confidence, intimacy, and self-trust converge, the female body is allowed to respond fully. Orgasms are not forced, arousal is not coaxed, pleasure is not conditional. Instead, the experience becomes natural, fluid, and profound. Knowledge creates this environment. It provides the tools, the understanding, and the awareness to transform sexual experience into something deeply human, empowering, and endlessly fulfilling. A woman who knows her body, her desires, and the principles of arousal does not need to perform. She needs only to be present. She becomes the author of her own pleasure, the architect of her own intimacy, and the steward of her own self-trust. Knowledge frees her from fear, illuminates her path to fulfillment, and allows every connection, physical, emotional, and relational, to reach its fullest potential. Confidence, intimacy, and self-trust are not merely byproducts of knowledge. They are its natural consequence. And when they are present, the female experience of pleasure transforms into a celebration of intelligence, presence, and authenticity. Knowledge gives women permission to explore, permission to communicate, and permission to trust themselves. And in that permission lies the greatest power of all, the power to experience pleasure fully, freely, and with profound self-awareness.